Welcome to the iPad student orientation presentation. Hopefully this short presentation will help you get started with some of the basic functionality of your iPad. So first thing I want to talk about is your Apple ID. You should only have one Apple ID for all the devices that you use. If you already have some type of Apple product, an iPhone or otherwise, you probably already have an Apple ID, and you should use that same Apple ID to set up your accounts and access everything on your iPad. If you don't have an Apple ID, if you're not an iPhone user, you're Android and other things, you can always create one. And so this PDF will be provided. The link here is appleid.apple.com. So basically just go to their website and create that account. You can associate your Apple ID with 2 email addresses. So the idea would be probably associating that with your Fisher email as well as some type of personal account. And you can always access that under the settings. So under settings, you'll see Apple ID, and you can log in that information under the settings of your iPad. If you do have an Apple ID that's associated with a family plan, that may cause some issues. So you want to make sure that the Apple ID you're using is solely dedicated to you, not necessarily to a family or group of individuals. Okay, so a couple other things. This is a really quick and easy one, but you do want to customize your iPad's name. This helps when you're airdropping files or sharing documents, or even in the classroom app, your name pops up in certain areas based on how the iPad is named. So you want to customize that within the settings. So I'm going to just go back to my home. I'm going to open up my settings app, and you'll see under General on the left, and then you'll see About, and you'll see your iPad's name, and you can just click on this and you can actually write over that. So the recommendation is first name, last name's iPad, and then just save that in there. So that will definitely help in a lot of areas. Oops. Okay, so that's one. The next couple things here are other general settings that you want to take a look at. So also in your settings app under general, you're going to see an option for background app refresh. You want to turn that off. We've learned over time, and actually from Apple helping us as well, we've gotten the recommendation that you do not need to have your apps refreshing in the background all the time. Your apps are set to refresh every time you bring them to the forefront of what you're using. So you don't have to have that on, and that can actually save some battery life and other things. So I would turn that off. And same thing, this is a little bit related. I often see people closing their apps and kind of wiping them away, kind of quitting them permanently. You don't have to do that as well. Your iPad is not using the app as long as it's not actively being used at the time or at the forefront of what you're doing. So it's okay to have all those apps open all the time. Don't worry about that either. The only time I really quit an app is if it's actually not functioning properly or some type of issues going on. Sometimes, just like restarting a computer, it's helpful to close the app altogether and start it fresh. Okay, also under customizing some things, so you want to customize your control center. Your control center is actually accessed in the upper right corner if you swipe. So this is your control center. You can see some things I've got going in there. And you can customize all these little apps and icons that you can use, and it's basically a quick and easy way to get to some of these features. So one of the things that we recommend you actually adding to your control center is the ability to screen record, which is what I'm using right now to make this video for you. So in the control center, you see this little icon with the red kind of bullseye looking thing. It tells me I'm recording. That's the screen recording app, basically, or functionality within the control center. And so to customize the control center, again, you're going to go to settings, just underneath general this time, control center, and then you can customize the control center. So you'll see all of the items at the top here are already included in that control center, and all of the items at the bottom are not. So screen record, you can see mine's already up here. Yours will probably be down under more controls. You can use the little green plus sign and move that up. And then you can also rearrange these if you want them to look a little different in that control center for you. So you can really customize that however you see fit. There might be other things down here that you also want. So if you use any of those things frequently, feel free to move them up, or if there's things above that you don't use, feel free to move them down. So make it work for you. Another thing to think about is also in the control center is using the do not disturb function. I don't know if you are familiar with it or you use it already, but it can be a really helpful way to make sure that, especially when you're in class time or anytime, maybe when you're studying or other things where you don't want different alerts, whether it be email or text messages or notifications from apps going off and kind of, popping up on your screen all the time, you can set do not disturb so none of that happens. So again, up in your control center, you'll see this menu, and the do not disturb is this little moon icon. And if you just click it, it turns do not disturb on. But if you actually click and hold, you get this option. Would you like it to be on for an hour, until sometime later this evening, until you leave the location? You can schedule how long it's on. And actually, if it pulls up that you've got things going on in your calendar, it may say, you know, do you want to have this on until you're done with this class that I see in your calendar for the next hour? So there's a lot of ways to customize do not disturb so that it can be really helpful for you. We specifically recommend this if at any time you're doing something like group presentations or sharing your iPad screen up on a projector. You know, those are all times when whatever's on your screen is also what the rest of the room could see. So that's a really important time to use do not disturb, just to make sure that nothing that you didn't want to show up, shows up more visibly for others. Another thing I want to just mention is around customizing widgets. So widgets are actually accessed from your home. These things on the left here are widgets. Now, this you can either have open, or you can actually have this collapsed. And if you go all the way down on these widgets, way down to the bottom, you'll see an edit. So when you go to edit, first of all, you have the option, just like we did in the customize the control center, which of these things do you want to use as widgets and which do you not? So all these things at the bottom are not necessarily being used, which you can turn them on if you would like them. All of these in red are in that long list of widgets, but you also can pin 3 to the top. Those are the ones that you see without having to scroll at all. So again, you can choose what those are. It's totally up to you. One thing that we do recommend though is this batteries widget. The batteries widget can be very helpful specifically for your Apple Pencil, so that you can easily from that home screen always see how much battery your Apple Pencil still has and if it needs to be charged. Obviously, you want to make sure your Apple Pencil is always charged before you get to class, before you need to be using it. So having that readily available can be very helpful. Also in this widgets area, you see the keep on the home screen. This gives you the option if you want those widgets to always be permanently displayed on the home screen on that left side, or if you want that to be collapsible. So if it's collapsible, you just have to swipe over so that it pops open. Again, just your preference, totally up to you. Okay, so those are the widgets. A couple other things to talk about are just gestures. Again, some of these are probably very familiar to you if you've used Apple products before, but some of them may not be. So especially on an iPad, using the dock is very important. There's a lot of functionality that you get by having that dock. When you have an app open, you can swipe up from the very bottom slowly and access your dock over top of another app. Okay, so swipe up very slowly from the bottom. Accessing notifications is a swipe from the top of your screen. So swiping down, you can see notifications from different apps. Accessing your widgets, we just talked about. This would be on your home screen. You would swipe to the right and you would be able to see the widgets. Accessing the control center, we already talked about. Again, so from the top right-hand corner, accessing the control center. Accessing recent apps. So if you actually swipe up from the center, from the center to the bottom. Oh, I think you have to do this not within an app. That's why it wasn't working. So from the center to the bottom. There we go. From the bottom to the center. It takes a little practice. So you can get all the recent apps that you have open. And then obviously you can, filter through them to jump to the app that you need. Another way to do that, and you can see I don't necessarily always do it with the gesture. If you have an app open, you can double click and that will also take you to that same recent app screen. I just find that to be faster, but obviously whichever one you prefer. So that's accessing recent apps. And then search is a swipe down from the home screen. So once you're on the home screen, you can do a quick swipe down and you can search for anything here. You can search for apps, you can search for files, photos, whatever it might be. So really it's searching your entire iPad and it'll bring up all different kinds of options. Okay, so those are some of the gestures. Now cursor movement. Again, there's some things here that we use pretty commonly and others that maybe not. You can tap to position your cursor between words. Sorry, go back. You can double tap to select an entire word. And you should be able to double tap with 2 fingers to actually select the entire sentence. In some cases I've seen that's actually a triple tap to get the entire sentence. It depends a little bit on how you have it set up and what operating system you're using. You can also use the extend bars. So you see in the image here, the little blue icons at the beginning and end of the paragraph, those extension bars you can move to also indicate what you want to be selected. And you can click and hold your finger over any piece of that highlighted text so that you get that magnification box, again, shown in the picture here, so that you can see more closely exactly where it is that you're putting that selection box. That always helps as well, like if you're trying to fix a word with a typo or something and you need to move your cursor right to the certain letter in the word, that magnification really comes in handy. You can also tap and hold for a pop-up that will give you a variety of options, selecting text, copy and formatting, some of the common formatting options that you might be looking for. And with 2 fingers and drag, you can actually move your cursor around in a given paragraph. So some of those things, again, take a little more practice than others, and some we use more frequently than others, but go ahead and experiment with some of those. Another thing to just talk through, again, I think you're probably familiar with some of these, but maybe not all, is icons, folders, and docs. So you know the iPad has multiple screens, and you can have multiple apps on those screens. So you can see, this is my home screen here, but I can have multiple screens. I can move the apps around between these screens so they can be sorted for different types of activities. So this is my kid's screen, this is my screen. So you can customize all of that. You can click and hold to move those apps around or to delete those apps. And so click and hold, and you actually get this option here. So you could right away delete the app if you just want it to be gone altogether. If you want to move it, you actually have to choose Edit Home Screen first. Then you get the little dancing icons, tell you kind of they're in the movable mode, and then you can start moving these around. So just click and drag, move them to whatever different position that you want those to go in. No, I don't want it to go there. Okay, so I'm going to move it back over here, wherever you want those to go. So you can move those apps around. And then when you're done, just hit the home button, and that will kind of reset everything back to the way it was. Oops. Okay, and then you can also drag apps over top of each other to create folders. So you'll see I have some folders here. I have a web conferencing folder. If I click on that, you can see there's 2 separate apps inside of it. And again, if I click and hold an app and I go to Edit Home Screen, I get them to move. And then, as I said, I can actually drag that over top of a folder and let go. That will then put that in a grouping with that other items in that folder. And I can also change the titles of these folders. So you can organize these apps into whatever groupings you want and it makes sense to you. And you can see you can also have multiple pages within just this folder. So there's a lot of different ways to organize the apps on your iPad so that it works for you. Okay? And again, just click the home screen and then you'll be all done. The other thing to talk a little bit about is apps and the dock. And so again, we've talked about this. Your dock is down here at the bottom. On your home screen, it shows by default, but when you're in an app, you can drag up from the very bottom to see the dock. Your dock can hold up to 15 items. And so everything to the left, right before this little line here, are the items that I have stored in my dock. You would just click your icon from the home screen, edit home screen so that it's dancing again, and then just drag it down into the dock if you want to add new things to your dock. And also you can see I have a folder in my dock. So not just individual apps can be there, but also folders containing a whole bunch more apps can be in your dock if that's how you prefer to organize things. The 3 items to the left are the most recently used apps. So that will always rotate automatically. You can't control which 3 apps showed there. It's just the most 3 recent apps that you've used. Okay? All right, so let's talk through about files a little bit. So your Files app is really, really helpful and important. This is obviously an important place where you're going to be storing files, but also where you're going to be accessing files across other devices and platforms. And so by default, you'll have an area where you can store files on your iPad, and you can do that. The downside of storing anything on your iPad is 1, that it's taking up the storage space on your iPad, and 2, it's only then accessible on your iPad. So if you would like to access it from another computer or another location, you can't necessarily do that. So what we recommend is making sure that your iCloud Drive is set up here. That's associated with your iCloud Apple ID. And also we suggest adding in Google Drive here. So remember, your Fisher account is connected with your Google Drive access, And you have unlimited storage on Google Drive. And so most of the things that you're storing, you probably want to store on Google Drive. So again, you can access it on your iPad as well as other devices, and you have no restrictions on storage limits. Okay, so you want to add that in the Files app. You want to use that little edit option, and then that will give you an option of what types of different locations you want to load into this app, and Google Drive will be one of them. And then you'll just sign in with your Fisher account, and that should be all set. And it will sync with anything you already have set up on your Google Drive account. Okay, now one of the fun things, multitasking is really great on the iPad, especially for a lot of reasons. Academically, you want to look at multiple things at the same time. And there's a couple different ways of doing multitasking. So one of the first ones is opening one app and then having another app. It's called slide over. So the second app kind of just floats over the top of the first app. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to just keep this app in the back here. This is actually Keynote with my presentation slides. I'm going to drag from the bottom so that you can see my dock. And then I'm going to choose to pull Notability here just over the top. Okay, so that's a slide overview. So then I can take a look at a given note and I can see what that looks like just over top of the background app. Okay, now these little anchors here at the top or the bottom, I can actually just swipe that down, all the way down. There we go. So I just swipe it into kind of the recent app mode and then swipe it all the way up to the top to get rid of it. So that's the slide over mode. Now, next, what you might want is actually split view. So instead of just having the second app float over the top, I actually want the two apps to be directly side by side so I can look at the two things next to each other. So to do that, again, open up your dock down at the bottom, but then this time pull the second app and pull it all the way over to the side, and you see you get that kind of black background to the side, and then drop it. And then you can see that you've got actually two apps right next to each other. And again, there's a little anchor here in the middle, and I can control how much of the screen I want to be set for one app versus the other. So let's say I want to be looking, I'm going to be reading what's in this article, and I've got to read through here, but then I need to go back over to my Keynote slide and maybe make some changes. So I can move that kind of as needed as I'm working. Okay, so that's called split view. And then again, when you're done, you just take that anchor here and just move it all the way over to the side. So that closes the other app out. The other thing you can do is actually split view in Safari specifically. So this is really specific to just viewing two specific websites within Safari. So I'm going to close Keynote and open up Safari. So you can see I've got one page already open here, but I can open another one. Okay, so now I've got two tabs open in Safari. And again, you've got it, as many tabs as you want here, but I can now actually pull one of these tabs. Oops. Let me pull this tab. And I can pull the whole tab over to the side, and then I can do split view with the two websites. Okay, so again, and then I can navigate, to different areas of this specifically. I can use this one again to go to something else. And I can really use them as two separate web browsers right next to each other to do, again, some type of activity, specifically in Safari. Now, that is not necessarily going to work in Chrome or Firefox or something else. That's specific to the Safari browser on your iPad. And then, again, these anchors in the middle, I can move those, and then when I'm done, I can just swipe one off to the side. Okay? So that is multitasking, both slide over and split view in a couple different ways. So that should be helpful. Another thing I want to talk about is the difference between Airplay and Airdrop. Again, you may or may not have used some of these things in your personal use of devices like this, but I'll just talk through it so you're aware of what is possible. Airdrop is really the sharing of files, photos, documents, specifically from one device to another using Bluetooth. And so the key is that you have to be within 30 feet of the other person. This isn't something like sending an email, to somebody who's not next to you. This is really actually sharing a file specifically over Bluetooth when you are located close together. So that's what Airdrop can be used for. And then Airplay can actually be used to project your iPad to an Apple TV or another type of projection, Apple projection device, but usually in most cases it'll be an Apple TV. and that will let you display whatever's on your iPad on whatever the display monitor is connected with that Apple TV. So it may be a TV screen, it may be the actual projector screen in your classroom. And so again, Airplay is in the control panel. So when I open this up, you'll see screen mirroring. And then you can see certain Apple TVs will show up that are in location to where you specifically are, and will allow you to AirPlay to them. So that's how you would do AirPlay. And then Airdrop is usually located through the share button. Oops. So even if I just go back to this Safari window here, usually you can see anytime you see the little square in the arrow, sometimes people call it a share-o, but that's the option to do a lot of sharing between documents, between individuals, and between apps. But usually Airdrop is one of the things specifically located in there. So there's nobody nearby right now. Oh, my Mac is showing up. But this will actually bring up people that are located within that distance that you have the ability to airdrop different files, again, or links or images to. Okay, so that's Airdrop. And I think those are used quite a bit, especially in the classroom, both for sharing documents and then also projecting your screen. Okay, now a little bit about your Apple Pencil. You do need to pair your Apple Pencil with your iPad. So to do that, you're actually going to remove the cap on the end, and then you're going to plug the Apple Pencil directly into your iPad through the Lightning port, which is the same port you use to charge the iPad. So you have to do that at least once to pair your iPad with the device. After that, it should remember the pairing. If it ever forgets, just unplug it and plug it in again, and it should bring that right back up. And so that is a really easy way just to make sure that your pencil is connected with your iPad. And then charging your pencil. You can also charge your pencil that same way. If you plug it into the side, it will be pulling power directly from your iPad to charge the pencil. Now, it charges the pencil very, very quickly. I think you get about 3 hours of use on your Apple Pencil and about 3 minutes of charging. So if you do forget to charge your pencil, that's a great way to kind of quickly make sure that it has some power. However, we don't typically recommend charging your pencil like that every time because it's sticking out of the side of the iPad, and if something were to happen, your iPad gets bumped off the table, it's very likely that that will break, and if that lightning connector breaks off your pencil, you're never going to be able to charge it again. So what we recommend is actually using the little adapter you see on the screen here. In your Apple Pencil box, there's a little tiny adapter in there that you can connect the end of your Apple Pencil to the adapter, and then your actual charging cord for your iPad to the other end, and charge it directly from the wall. That will also charge much, much faster and much, much safer, just to make sure nothing gets broken. Okay? And also remember, everybody's iPad pencils looks the same. So if you do want to customize your pencil, that's fine. There's wraps or skins or other things that you can buy for an Apple Pencil. We just ask that nothing is attached to the Apple Pencil that can't be removed. So please make sure whatever you attach to it can come off eventually if it needs to. Okay. And then last but not least, I just want to go over a couple things about if questions come up, where do you go? So if you have any hardware or software issues, if a keyboard is not responding correctly, if an app is not loading properly, any type of hardware software issues, please stop by the OIT service desk first. Please don't go directly to the Apple Store. These iPads are owned by Fisher, and so we have a little bit of a different system about how we would work with Apple if we did need to do any type of repair, and all of that would need to go through the service desk. So please reach out to the OIT service desk first. If you have lost or stolen equipment, you should really reach out to Safety and Security Office first. Also, if you are off campus and something is stolen, you should actually file a police report for that type of activity. So contacting Safety and Security Office first, they'll also help you walk through that process if that happens to be needed. After that, please contact the OIT service desk. Please be aware too that if the device is lost, the OIT service desk may be able to help you find it if that device is still connected to Wi-Fi in a certain location. So they may be able to help you in the process of tracking it down. And then anything else, really specific class activities, using this app or that app to complete a given assignment in a course, all of that should really go specifically to the instructor of the course where your iPads are being used. Okay? So that is all for the orientation. If you have any questions, feel free again to reach out to any of these different areas for additional support. Thank you.